So this is an ambitious slide deck because we are trying to aim in giving you a peek or a sneak view across the movement. And this is particularly difficult when you have Wikimedians who are honored as Wikimedians of the Year, who are stewards of the movement, who are admins and bureaucrats in their own communities. So we understand that this is a tall order, but this is our effort. By no means is it a conclusive effort or a final say. We are more than happy to accommodate, to involve, to include suggestions for further sessions in an iterative approach. So this is our attempt. We just want to make that clear. So next slide, please. Like I mentioned, why is this session or why is this topic important? While we are all working with the Wikimedia movement and contributing to the Wikimedia projects in our own way, it is very important for us to understand the context. This is a quote by one of the Wikimedians with whom our team interacted very closely earlier. If we don't think of Wikipedia as having a specific context and history, we won't be able to think about Wikipedia in a way that actually makes sense. In most of the occasions when we talk about Wikipedia or any other Wikimedia project, utility is the only thing that comes into mind, that you have been able to look up an article, that you have been able to read about something, get some knowledge. But there is a larger context there. Context of people trying to put their volunteer time, context of people trying to fight disinformation, context of people trying to build resources for their own community in languages that are not yet as visible as English or any other global language. So context is key to understanding most of the efforts that go into our movement, which is again going to be super important when we go and take a look at the applications that we receive or the questions that our communities are going to ask us. It is for this reason that we are going to take a little time to understand what context makes Wikimedians come into the movement, and also what context makes Wikimedians probably engage better and sometimes drop out. That is the key. Next slide, please. So this is an obvious question. Okay. That's an unintended effect. Yeah, so this is a little bit of history. I know that all of us are aware of this. I just want to do it because we wanted to start from the beginning and keep the order of the conversation. First, there was Wikipedia in 2001, as we all know. Next slide, please, Jessica. And as you're all aware, Wikipedia started as a project in a very different avatar. One slide before, please. Sorry, thank you. Yeah, that's the one. Okay, when the project started in 2001, I don't think anybody, whether it was Larry Sanger or Jimmy Wales, had any idea as to whether this project is going to achieve the epic proportion of involvement, of collaboration that it has achieved now. What it was intended to do was to provide information. All of the questions, all of the key things that we understand now, the questions of safety, the questions of collaboration, the questions of community health, are all questions that have evolved because of the continuous interaction of community members. This is to show that we are a growing movement. It was not that we decided on a charter or a mandate and we have only stuck to it. We have evolved, we have responded to many external factors. We have also tried and took some problems head on. That's the reason why our movement is considered to be one of the safest places on the internet to collaborate. Next slide, please. So this is when things get interesting. The Wikipedia project, which was a completely volunteer-driven project, at some point started to become professional, started to acquire an institutional approach. And that was when Wikimedia Foundation was established. Wikimedia Foundation, as all of you are aware, is based in the US. It is a nonprofit organization. It has 500 plus staff, more than 350 of them are in US, and the rest of the staff come from various countries. As of now, it is 35 plus countries. We have offices in San Francisco and in Washington, DC, with some conversations of trying to understand how a regional hub works, whether that is going to be seen as an office space that will have concurrent work of Wikimedia Foundation and a regional entity. Those are all evolving conversations. Again, there are some facts and figures there. We started our first fundraising activity in the year 2002 and 2003. 2003, Wikimedia Foundation was founded, Board of Trustees were formed. 2004, Wikimedia Deutschland was founded and was accepted as first affiliate of the Wikimedia Foundation. For more information, you could go take a look at the Wikimedia meta pages. It's fascinating history. Next slide, please. Let's get into the details. At 5 years before 2021, around 2014, 2016, the period, it was a very simple arrangement within the Wikimedia ecosystem that there were volunteer communities and there were affiliates. And affiliates was not at all a complicated term. There were chapters. That was the way that Wikimedia movement organized itself and functioned itself. But over a period of time, it was realized that chapters were not the best way to reach out to community members. There was also a possibility of coming together as user groups. This was more at the level of thematic, more at a level of topics that are of interest and are of importance to people. So if you look at the schema of things now, we have 39 chapters which are functional and which are operational, and we have 138 user groups. We have user groups on a varied topics. We have user groups that work on cemetery. We have user groups that are majorly represented by grandmothers. We have user groups that work on specific areas such as medicine. We have user groups that work on eclectic issues or come together on eclectic issues. So it's a fascinating world. And we also have thematic organizations. Wikimedia Project, Wikimedia Medicine Project, and Amical Wikimedia are the only two thematic organizations. Their focus is on the theme and not really on the region or language. Why this is important is because this is also pointing towards a future where we don't have to limit ourselves to only geographical or linguistic associations, but can explore larger ways of collaboration. So this is the way that the Wikimedia ecosystem exists as of now. The reason why volunteers are not represented here is because we are specifically talking about affiliates. The Wikimedia ecosystem as such has, if all of this is one way of looking at it, the other half of it is the Wikimedia volunteer ecosystem. Next slide, please. Talking about the Wikimedia projects, again, I feel like I'm an absolute amateur speaking here to such amazing Wikimedians, but just to cover that entire conversation, we have Wikimedia projects that get into different parts of the world, that tackle different kinds of data, that tackle different types of content. We have Wikisource, we have Wiktionary, we have Wikispecies, we have a lot of things. We have a lot of projects that cater to varied interests of people. We have text-based projects, we have image-based projects, we also have audio-based projects. We also have tools and gadgets that help people record and contribute to our Wikimedia movement. As of now, English Wikipedia is the largest of the Wikipedia projects, and hopefully a lot of other language projects would be able to move into the same same importance, move into the same kind of rigor that English Wikipedia has been able to set itself. So the Wikimedia projects, I'm not going to go into all the details of how the name came about and all of that because it's pretty obvious. But what I do want to mention is that although Wikimedia projects share the same kind of philosophy, there's an obvious difference in the way that the projects themselves are taken up by people. As we all know, Wikipedia attracts a lot of attention, both in terms of resources and also in terms of contribution. Whereas some other projects which have equal or probably even more potential are trying to make the case for importance, for support. And this is again a place where we expect the regional committees to play a very important role in understanding whether an upcoming project will have more impact around their communities or is more suitable for the level of the work that is taken up in their communities. We all understand that Wikidata is changing the way that we understand how knowledge ecology or how knowledge is being created. Maybe there is a similar opportunity for Wikisource. Maybe there is a project for Wikimedia Commons that can help us make Wikipedia better. So how do we understand these opportunities is going to be a big responsibility for the regional committee members. I'm sorry. Next slide, please. We just want to make it clear, this is something that is core to our philosophy, this is core to our way of working. any project, it's not just Wikipedia, it's Wikisource, it's Wiktionary, it's Wikidata, it's Wikimedia Commons. The projects come before the foundation. Foundation's role is to ensure that there are certain responsibilities, that there are certain legal and compliance and fiduciary responsibilities that should not be pushed onto the volunteers. It is very important that there is an organized way of working with communities, working with these challenges, these responsibilities. That's the responsibility of the Wikimedia Foundation. The sanctity of the project, the autonomy of the project is always much more important and uh, much more sacred than the formal organization. We want the regional grants committee members to take this into account even when they are going through difficult applications, even when there are difficult questions being asked about the commitment, about the involvement of affiliates, including the Wikimedia Foundation. Next slide, please. This is when things get interesting. Why do we call it a movement? We have been using the term Wikimedia movement quite freely. Next slide, please. This is a definition that we have shared, or we have taken up from the Global Fund for Women. A movement is a group of people with shared purpose who create change together. A movement, and this is very important for us in the way that we are thinking about the next steps. A movement has many participants but no owners. What we want to see in our movement is a strong pipeline of leaders. It is not enough if we have a few exceptional geniuses who are able to put their community on the global map, create astonishing projects, bring amazing content out. We also need people who would be able to work with the same interest, take forward that legacy. We also need to have powerful grassroots support. There is no community that can succeed or that can sustain its work based only on the first generation or the active people. There has to be always a constant supply of people, constant supply of interest and agency. We definitely need to build solid partnerships. It is one thing for Wikimedians to put their own effort and to build a project, but it's an altogether different imagination to have strong partnerships, stable partnerships, which can scale up the program in a much better way and in a much bigger way. We also have a shared political goal. That's one of the reasons why we are calling ourselves the movement. And we definitely have a plan for the future. If you take a look at the Wikimedia Movement's strategic direction, or take a look at the movement strategy recommendations, it's very evident the political goal that we have. We do want to be the essential infrastructure in free knowledge. And the plan for the future is that we want to create an ecosystem. We want to be part of an ecosystem which allows for people to freely share, create, and disseminate knowledge. That's the plan that we have for the future. Next slide, please. So the shared political goal, like I mentioned earlier, is a world in which every single human being can freely share in the sum of all knowledge. What we also want to do is to allow and to engage people in creating that knowledge. It's one thing to be able to share the knowledge that is already accumulated or accrued, but allowing for people to and engaging people to create new modes of knowledge is equally important. A lot of criticism that the Wikimedia projects receive is because of the lack of diversity, is because of the lack of the non-representation of marginalized communities. How do we work with that? That's going to be the plan for the future. And that's where, again, we want to stress the regional grants committees are going to play a very important role. And to understand what our plan for the future is, we have two flag posts or two pillars that can that can help us in having that intention clarified. One is the strategic direction that we have. The other one is the movement strategy recommendations. Next slide, please. So while talking about the future and talking about the intent, it's very important to understand that we are not doing this alone. In fact, if you look at the strategic direction, it's very evident that we do not want to do it alone. What we do want to do is to ensure that there is this ecosystem that's created. What we want to do, or what we aspire to create, is an ecosystem that will allow for all kinds of activities that are in the domain of free knowledge. It could be open access, it could be information, it could be software related, it could be tech related. It also needs to be an inclusive platform or inclusive space that allows for people from many different organizations, many different work cultures to come and contribute. That's one of the reasons why when we asked for, or when we requested for applications for the Regional Grants Committee, we did not mention or we did not make it mandatory for only Wikimedians. We want to welcome people who have worked in the heritage sector or the GLAM sector. We want to welcome people who are working in the FOSS community to come take a look into how our movement is working, what can be a good segue in collaboration with these communities. So this is the free knowledge, the free culture movement that we are contributing to, and not just the Wikimedia movement. Again, when the Wikimedia Alliances Fund question is going to come up in the next few months, when the regional grants committees are going to be introduced to that particular funding program, I want all of you to remember this conversation. Next slide, please. That's a strategic direction. We mentioned free knowledge or the free culture movement in a very abstract term. I want to dig a little more deeper into that into that particular canon of thinking. Lawrence Lessig, who's seen as one of the key figures in understanding of the free knowledge movement, mentioned that free culture has always been a part of our intellectual heritage and illuminates the tension between the already created and not yet created. There is a very thin line of contention or difference between the way that we are understanding what is free knowledge and what is copyleft. This is probably a conversation that goes into into hours of discussion. What I do want to mention is that we are looking at content and we are looking at information that is allowed or that can be allowed for all kinds of usage. It's not just going to be enough if we say that we're going to create the content but are not going to make it available for commercial usage. That's not the philosophy that the Wikimedia movement is working. We are fully open to all kinds of remix and reimagination and reinterpretation of the knowledge that is created. Technology could be liberating rather than oppressing, which is a Stuart Brand quote, is again a very key piece of information for us while we take a look at the future of our movement. We are so dependent on technology in the way that we are creating tools, in the way that we are creating gadgets, in the way that we are building new technology for inclusion, for verification, for fighting disinformation. This should be the way that we go forward in creating better ecosystem or creating better infrastructure for Wikimedia movement. And I want to finish this particular piece of conversation, quoting Catherine Marr, who was the ED of the Wikimedia Foundation, the former ED. And she very poignantly says, we believe that knowledge is alive and growing and that it is most useful when used, not just static, but engaged with, built upon and expanded on. If you look at the evolution of a Wikisource page, it is not just about one person doing all of the activities. It's about collaboration. It's about how a page, which is a scanned copy, becomes a completely proofread page and allows for people to engage with it so that it can be shared, so that it can become a point of conversation, point of engagement. So it's not enough if we are able to just pile up data. This data, this knowledge, this information has to become useful. How do we do that? How do we work with our communities is again going to be a very interesting question for us. Next slide, please.
I have a suggestion here, Tanvir. If we can, we're a small group, we can open the mics for this contribution.
Sure.
And we'd like to, for you to freely answer this question, like what does it mean for you to talk about the movement and how we define ourselves? So we're not going to use the Menti, but actually open the mics. And actually, I would like to skip here to somebody who contributed, or actually invite her to give her own definition. Yeah, sorry, I can't pronounce that properly, but if you can give us the definition you sent to us, which was wonderful. I think it might be here. No, in this version we included it in yesterday's session, but since we have you live, you can share it with us.
Yes, thank you so much, Jessica. It's my pleasure that I'm getting this opportunity to share my own thoughts here. It's just a beginning of this journey for myself, but I have tried my best. I will just read it for all of you. From my point of view, the definition of Wikimedia movement is, are you getting my voice? I'm audible?
Perfect. Very well.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Thank you. From my point of view, the definition of Wikimedia movement is, it is a continuous process of knowledge creation. Our day-to-day world is very limited, but the Wikimedia movement opens a door to the world of knowledge, which is in darkness or beyond our vision. Our vision is limited, but Wikimedia movements broaden our vision and expand our dimensions in understanding the knowledge of the universe. The Wikimedia movement is the key to open the treasure of hidden knowledge. Thank you.
That's wonderful. And everybody was very moved by those words yesterday. We had it on a slide and we shared it as well. And at this point, everybody just kind of contributed with their own understanding of the free knowledge movement, or specifically our Wikimedia movement. So freely open your mics or put your hands up or write on the chat as well if you'd like. We want to hear your thoughts.
Thank you, Anthony. I'm just going to read out Anthony's wonderful message here. Anthony says, it is working on the same objectives towards one mission, a cooperation of different people towards a goal. As a Wikimedian, it is working for the betterment of the Wiki projects and the whole Wikimedia community. Thank you so much, Anthony. If you have good internet connection, we encourage you to just, raise your hand, open your mic, and share your thoughts with us.
Hello, everyone. Hello?
Hi, Joy.
Okay.
Hi, Joy.
Okay, great. So for me, the Wikimedia movement is an open collaborative village which seeks to increase factual knowledge with the voices of represented and underrepresented without any bias, in an attempt to produce shared knowledge with diversity as a hallmark.
Thank you so much, Joy. The diversity question or the diversity point that you brought in is extremely important. Before we go to the next one, I just want to read what Carlo has written here. He says that it's raining hard. Okay, please, I hope that you're safe. The Wikimedia movement is a group of people aiming to share free, accessible knowledge to everyone as much as possible. And with a smiley, and which is very interesting, he says, where discussions are highly encouraged. Oh yes, discussions are highly encouraged. We have seen talk pages, we have seen discussion pages go more than the article length itself. So that's wonderful. Thank you. I see that Euphemia has her hand raised, and then we'll come back to messages that are here in the chat. Euphemia, all yours.
Hello, everyone. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, just a brief one. When I think of Wikimedia movement, I think of freedom of expression. And when I talk about free knowledge, it really gives that freedom to volunteers, to their communities, to spring up ideas, to work on projects, to build skills towards one common purpose of sharing knowledge and not just being the consumers of information, but creating information from their diverse communities, culture, and peculiarities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Euphemia. I think the peculiarity, the diversity, the difference of cultures that we bring in is probably one of the biggest strengths of our movement. I'm going to continue reading from the chat, which has some really interesting reflections. Navaraj mentions that free culture to collaboration and share to free. It's not only for cost, it's actively respect each other's contributions. That's so true. Every edit that you made on a project is respected. And even when you revert an edit, it is still done with respect. In fact, one of the principles that we have in the Wikimedia movement is to assume good faith. So I think that's truly important for all of the work that we do as a committee, even when we are disagreeing with certain applications or giving them feedback that is not what they would expect. Farha writes that the free knowledge culture movement is a movement in which knowledge is not locked in by gatekeepers, but is freely shared and contributed to. Very true. We also share and contribute information not only in text, but in many different forms. We do it in the audiovisual form, we do it in the data form. So we are really a movement and not just text-based encyclopedia. Yaman, whom I'm so excited to see, I hope that he has got some sleep and some rest after conducting a wonderful Wikimania, shares that a community collaborating together in an inclusive way to share and spread knowledge in all languages and for different cultures. Yaman, I think, is summing up Wikimania, which is so beautiful. Yes, that's exactly what the Wikimedia movement is. And that's how Wikimania this time was also planned. There was knowledge, there was different languages, there were different cultures, and more importantly, there was the spirit of collaboration. So, yeah. Thomas Bell shares saying that free knowledge is the continuation of the ideal that information and education is an individual right and a global good. Very true, very true. And that's one of the reasons why Wikimedia projects have stayed away from direct commercialization of the content. And the reason why we work with certain licenses, we work with certain ethos is because of all of those reasons. Thank you very much, Thomas. We have another few minutes if there are any more opinions, any more thoughts around the question about the movement. Otherwise, I would like to hand it over to Veronica to talk about the characteristics of our movement. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanvir. Thank you. And thank you everyone for sharing how your thoughts around what is the Wikimedia movement. And now that we've spoken and understood the history, the background, or refreshed ourselves, since we are Wikimedians already, on the context of the movement, we want to talk about the characteristics of this movement. What are the qualities that give us our own unique identity as a movement? And next slide, please. And the first one is that we are radically open, and we're radical in our openness, we're radical in our transparency, we're radical in the level of trust we place in people, and the fact that anyone can contribute not just to the content of the project, but that to the software that actually runs these wiki projects. Invite us to see how open we are, how transparent we are, and how we trust that everyone who contributes, who is engaging with this project, contributes and is part of the movement. Next slide, please. And we also see this in our grant making, in the resources, that anyone can truly apply for a grant. Anyone can comment on those grants. anyone can see what we're funding in full detail, not only today, but since we started funding. Decision making is based on power sharing, and you're part of that power sharing participatory model, with the review being conducted by a Wikimedia volunteer. All this is very different from the philanthropic space and how people normally would give resources to communities. And it's always exciting. I think when I joined the Wikimedia Foundation, it was interesting to recognize that sense of transparency and openness and a sense of trust and partnership amongst those who give resources, recognizes that the resources are owned by the movement and not any particular person. And there's a link to a report here, and we can put it in, let me put it in the chat, that allows you to see more and read more about the participatory nature of grant making within Wikimedia Foundation. Next slide, please. And why are we so open? I'll read a quote by Catherine Mayer that speaks to this. It says, "What underlies Wikipedia at the very heart is the fundamental idea that more people want to do good than harm. More people want to create knowledge than to destroy it. More people want to share than to contain. At its core, Wikipedia is about human generosity. We're giving ourselves, we're giving our knowledge, we're creating spaces to invite others, and that comes with a sense of generosity. Another characteristic is that we are unstructured and structured. As a whole, we have elements of structure, but also as a whole, we have seen moments where there's no particular formal structure. And as discussed earlier, Tanvir did share with us that volunteer communities are able to organize into affiliates, but some communities have elected to do this in part to allow them to be useful to the needs within those communities, such as being able to coordinate and work together, or being able to connect with other organizations within the free knowledge ecosystem. However, this structure reflects only on one aspect of the volunteer activity within the Wikimedia movement. And we see in the next slide a differentiation of those who are affiliated and those who are unaffiliated. Though the organized movement does not necessarily represent the whole movement. We do have, some people and organizations that are not affiliated, but are still able to contribute to the mission of Wikimedia. Not everyone also perceives themselves as being part of a movement. They choose to be individuals and contribute in their own ways, besides without being identifying themselves as being part of the movement. And there are many ways that we've seen people organize that are not necessarily around an affiliate structure. And this has been enabled by projects, campaigns, languages, people coming in to pursue different interests and curiosities. Next slide, please. And we also identify that, why do volunteers, what do volunteers do in the movement? The people playing different roles within the movement. One is to build that community support, and these could be through workshops and trainings, could be provision of materials or to community members, avenues and spaces of content production. We volunteers are participating in GLAM partnerships, are key in education partnerships, at the forefront of advocacy for free knowledge. They're supporting in brand awareness and public relations with the different communities. And in this next slide, we continue to see the maturity and growth of the movement. And one part is that we recognize that the organized bit of the movement is more than 18 years old and has since matured. We also recognize that we must make it easier to have more people to join the movement. We need to be able to sustain the work that we've built over the last, now we were celebrating 20 years, but we need to be able to build that pipeline for more people to feel that I can join the movement. And one way that we're doing that, and you will all now are part of that process, is making flexible resourcing for communities, that is more focused on specific capacities, very impact oriented, and less of how are you organized as an affiliate, what structures are those, which we have also seen that are rigid and can limit people's opportunities of participating in the movement. And we hope collaboratively and with your partnership that we will shift towards this more flexible sense of resourcing, and hopefully that will allow us to invite more people, allowing us to also sustain our movement. The other characteristic is that we are grassroots. As we've said before, we're a movement that has many participants from all over the world, but no particular owners. Wikipedia and Wikimedians came before the Wikimedian organizations existed. And, we see these from just spaces that we've created that allow people to contribute without having necessarily like username that before might have been the strictness or the rigidity of the process. Literally anyone can come in, I can say something, fix something. We won't track or even know who you are or where you are coming from. People make the content, people make the rules, people set the standards, and we have policies such as the friendly space, a policy that guides how we commune in the creation and contribution towards the knowledge. And we're diverse in Aria's definition, and in previous reflections, we talked about diversity, recognizing while we are diverse also, we're not diverse in very important ways that, and one key part is in resourcing. And we hope in your partnership, again, we will be able to foster that diversity as needed. In the next slide, we can see a map that represents, for example, where do we have Wikimedian chapters, where do we have user groups. We also want to recognize that communities have evolved in how they organize, that these might not be, a full representation of these organizing. But as we look at it now, we are seeing that there are places that we're not reaching. There are places where we don't have active communities, and we want to ask ourselves and reflect, who are we leaving out in this movement? What barriers do we need to eliminate to invite more people? How are we making accessibility easily accessible? Sorry for the repetition, to those communities that find it really hard to be part of the movement, even to know about the movement and participate in it. We are aware that there are other important dynamics that harm the diversity of one movement and affect what and how topics are written on Wikimedia projects, who participates in it, and who has access. And some of these are systemic issues that are already present in the different communities that we're working with, whether it's in the societies based on cultures. And we can't work without that recognition that these exist. And as the impact, and especially because these has impact on, project editorial policies, for instance, and guidelines on marginalized knowledge, on how cases of misinformation are handled and prevented, access to mobile-friendly tools, for example, and services, and other significant content gaps that we need to be aware of as we then think about inviting people to the movement. We have to be cognizant of the other systemic issues that might prevent that. And we have particular organized groups and campaigns that are supporting the movement in addressing those systemic issues that are harming the diversity within our movement. For example, some of the organizations we support were active in working to address movement-wide gaps and issues affecting issues around content, access, or even participation gaps. And we have, for example, Whose Knowledge, we have Art Plus Feminism, we also have Wiki in Africa, Wikimedia LGBT, and Wikigap. And these are just few of other organized groups within the movement that are very keen on addressing particular systemic issues, having diversity within our movement. And lastly, and with all the great work we're all doing and the mission we have ahead, we have time to have fun. One of the Wikimedians known as Siko Butes used to say that fun is also serious business. And, for us to be able to sustain this movement, we can't treat the joy we find in participation as, a nice to have. We are a movement that depends on sharing, on generosity, and we need to find ways of refilling ourselves and finding joy in what we are doing. And we can see in this slide, different spaces where people come together to have fun, whether it's to just spark your the intellectual joy within you, or to just commune with others on different things. No matter what it looks like for each of us, we think that building a culture that is welcoming, friendly, and fun is a really important aspect of building a reliable movement, but also reliable content. So it's not just serious business. And at the heart of it is that the movement is based on people. It's not projects. We are people. We make the movement what it is. Communities interact with each other and support each other in important ways, but they're facilitated and led by diverse groups of people, individuals who welcome, who train us, who organize, who tell us about, here's a movement, this is what I'm part of, and this is what it means for me. And later in the recording, we will see Alex sharing with us deeply on how movement organizers play such a critical role in the Wikimedia context.